Hi everyone, it's Nicole here for Lawn Fawn, and today I have a card featuring the brand new Gleeful Gardens stamp set and coordinating dies. I've also incorporated the brand new picket fence die as well as the stitched square die. To start my card, I am stamping a bunch of the images from the Gleeful Gardens stamp set on some smooth white cardstock so that I can color them in with Copic markers. And I'm going to be using both the large and the small snails from the Gleeful Gardens stamp set, the mushrooms, the grass, and the bird. Once I have all of those stamped with the Memento Tuxedo Black ink, this is a great ink to use so that your ink doesn't bleed when using Copic markers, I am going to color in all of my images. And because these have coordinating dies, I need to make sure I kind of stay within the lines, because there's going to be that white border around each when I die cut them. I'm using about 3 shades for the grass here. I lay down my lightest color, then my mid-tone color, and then going in with my darkest color. And I can blend all of that out with my lightest or mid-tone color if I think some of it needs to. With the grass, I didn't particularly blend it too much. I kind of like that to see more of the difference in color, more like you would see in nature. Then I'm going to color in these cute mushrooms, and I decided to kind of go with a pinkish purple and red color scheme for something kind of bright and fun. I wanted them to really stand out from the green cardstock that I'm using for the grass in the background and the blue that I'm using for the sky. Again, I'm using about 3 shades for the pink here. Laid down my lightest color and then my mid-tone, and I went ahead and blended that back out with my lightest color. And you can see that in between laying down each color, I kind of shift to a different area to color. That's because reds and pinks tend to bleed a little bit more than some of the other colors once the paper is really saturated. So I kind of like to give it a second to dry before I come back to it and lay down some more color. Going to color the snails again with some pinks and purples and reds. And I kind of didn't like the color scheme I had going there, so I went ahead and stamped another one. I wanted to have the snail's body a little bit lighter pink, and I got a little too dark with the one above. Go ahead and redo this really quickly with some lighter pink colors. And then for the snail up here, or the other part of the snail, I'm going to do kind of a more purple color scheme. And then I like to use these little dots to color in my image. And basically I'm just building up the colors just like you would do when you're coloring solid, but using that little dot technique. I think it adds some nice texture to the images. I'm going to color in his antenna with some gray. And I made his cheeks a little bit darker pink too. I always like adding a little bit of detail there. To create some difference in color here for the mushrooms, I'm kind of alternating doing the top of them pink or red and then the bottom pink or red. So just so that they're not all exactly alike. But I wanted to keep with the color scheme and not really introduce a ton of different colors into the card because there's quite a bit going on already. I'm going to end up using just about 3 of these mushrooms here. I stamped a little bit more than what I needed on my paper. I tend to do that a lot so that if I decide I need a few more images, I already have them stamped. In this case, I ended up not doing that. Just like with the snails, I am using some of those little dots to kind of help add in more texture to the images. And you can see as I start laying down more color how it really adds to the whole design of that particular image and gives it some fun texture and not quite such a flat look. Once I have all of these colored in and ready to go, I'm going to use my Elizabeth Craft snip scissors to cut apart my dies. These are great for cutting apart your die cuts and snipping all of those little wires in between. And then I will position all of these over the images and run them through my Big Shot die cutting machine. I like to die cut as many at one time as possible. So you can see I'm cutting almost all of the designs here. I'll have to go back and cut the rest of those blades of grass again, but I like to get as many with one pass of the machine as possible. I'll pop all of these out, and then I'm ready to start building my card. I've die cut some blue cardstock here using one of the stitched square dies. These are awesome, just like the stitched rectangles Lawn Fawn came out with. They now have some stitched squares. I also die cut the two shades of green cardstock using the stitched square, and then took the stitched hillside border to create those rolling hills of grass there. And I die cut the new picket fence from some white cardstock, and I've glued all of those in place on my card. I'm stamping my greeting with some black ink. This is a greeting from the Gleeful Gardens stamp set. And then I'm going to start adhering all of my elements. I'm going to lay them all out first to kind of see what design I like the best, and then I will glue all of these down and glue them in place. Now, I had started out only with the large snail, and as I glued all of these pieces down, I realized I was going to need something else to place up there with the little blade of grass and the small mushroom that's back in there in the rolling hills, as well as something up top with the greeting. The sky was pretty blah except for that stamped greeting. So I'm going to stamp my bird and color that in, and also stamp the small snail. So sometimes when you have your initial idea for a card, don't be afraid to kind of mix it up and go ahead and add to it, or even take away if you need to. This snail is going to have that same really, really light pink body, but I'm going to do the rest of it with the red instead, just to mix it up a tiny bit. Again, very much doing the same thing. Laid down my color and then kind of went in and added a little bit of dot detail. Darkened the cheeks and then laid down some gray for the antenna. And then I'll color the blade of grass as well. I think I decided I needed another one. Next, I'm going to color the bird, and for the bird I decided to go with a completely different color scheme. It coordinates nicely into the sky, but I wanted it to definitely be different than the rest of the images. So I laid down some really light yellows on the stomach portion of the bird, and then really light blue, and blended those together, and then went in with some darker aquas and started laying down the color a little bit. And once I have the color blended the way I want and have that yellow and blue nicely blended together, I'm going to go in with even darker colors and start laying down some of those little dots, and then go with my mid-tone color and do the same thing. And this will add some nice texture to the bird as well. I'll use a little orange for his beak. Then I'm going to go ahead and die cut all of these images, and I can finish adhering all of the pieces to my card. I like to use the Post-it tape to hold these in place. Even though I'm using the magnetic platform for my Big Shot, sometimes it can shift, and after you've gone through all the trouble of coloring in your images, it would be awful to have the die slip in the machine and ruin all of that hard work. I'm going to take the Wink of Stella clear glitter brush marker and add a little bit of glitter detail to the snails as well as the mushrooms. Just a little light covering of glitter adds a fun touch to this card. Go ahead and glue the rest of the pieces in place. Anytime you see where I've laid an acrylic block over something on my card, I've used some liquid adhesive, and I like to always put something kind of heavy on it to keep it laying flat so that it doesn't curl up while the adhesive dries. And acrylic blocks are already handy since I'm using them for so much stamping, so a lot of times that's what I'll use. I'm going to take a little bit of the Ranger Matte Medium and add some dots over the eyes on my images, and add some fun little silly eyes from Pretty Pink Posh. I love adding silly eyes to critters like this, and I think they add a lot of fun and whimsical, feeling, or add a whimsical feeling to this card. Once I have all of those glued in place, my card is all finished. I hope you've enjoyed this video showcasing some fun ways to use the brand new Gleeful Gardens stamp set and coordinating dies from Fawn. Please subscribe to my channel for weekly card making and stamping videos. The supplies I've used for this card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.